Philippines, and good day world. It's Thursday, January 11, 2024, and you're watching Newsline World. I'm Jayne Codnita. We will bring you the top stories we've gathered from all over the globe. First, lawyers representing SMNI addressed the National Telecommunications Commission or NTC and urged them to specifically point out the network's alleged violations. South Africa presented its case to the International Court of Justice, the highest court in the United Nations. The said country is accusing Israel of committing genocide in Gaza, but Israel said these allegations are baseless. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister clarified his country's intentions in the besieged enclave of Gaza. Russia's Putin visited a region located near the U.S. state of Alaska, and there he told the residents that the EU needs Moscow more than they need them. And King Charles III remains as Australia's head of state. These and more for tonight's edition of Newsline World. First in our news, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated his country's intention in Gaza amid repeated criticisms from various groups. Jayne Domingo reports.
Israel continues to face criticisms and pressure over its ongoing war between Hamas and its military operations in Gaza. To this, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu reiterated that the Jewish state has no plans to occupy Gaza in the long term and that it does not seek to displace the civilians living there. Netanyahu sought to clarify several issues, claiming that the military operations have not targeted non-combatants in Gaza and are solely focused on Hamas fighters.
I want to make a few points absolutely clear. Israel has no intention of permanently occupying Gaza or displacing its civilian population. Israel is fighting Hamas terrorists, not the Palestinian population. And we are doing so in full compliance with international law. The IDF is doing its utmost to minimize civilian casualties, while Hamas is doing its utmost to maximize them by using Palestinian civilians as human shields. The IDF urges Palestinian civilians to leave war zones by disseminating leaflets, making phone calls, providing safe passage corridors, while Hamas prevents Palestinians from leaving at gunpoint and often with gunfire. Our goal is to rid Gaza of Hamas terrorists and free our hostages. Once this is achieved, Gaza can be demilitarized and de-radicalized, thereby creating a possibility for a better future for Israel and Palestinians alike.
Netanyahu's statement comes as Israel is set to face South Africa's genocide allegations. Israel faces off the case brought by South Africa before the International Court of Justice after the latter accused the Jewish state of violating the 1948 Genocide Convention, which is a deal bringing any acts committed with intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. South Africa's claims have been rejected by Israeli government spokesperson Alon Levy, saying that the charge is an example of anti-Semitic blood libel. Reporting, this has been Jayne Domingo, SMNI News.
The hearing at the UN's highest court took place on Thursday with South Africa as the first to present their claims. The said country said it wants to end the mass killing of civilians in Gaza, to which Israel says is baseless. This report. The South African legal team presented their case to the International Court of Justice in The Hague on Thursday, saying the Jewish state had demonstrated a pattern of genocidal conduct since launching its full-scale war in Gaza. South African ambassador to the Netherlands, Vusi Madonsela, said that his country acknowledges that the genocidal acts and omissions by the State of Israel inevitably form part of a continuum of illegal acts.
Decades-long impunity for widespread and systematic human rights violations has emboldened Israel in its recurrence and intensification of international crimes in Palestine. At the outset, South Africa acknowledges that the genocidal acts and omissions by the State of Israel inevitably form part of a continuum of illegal acts perpetrated against the Palestinian people since 1948.
Meanwhile, its Justice Minister stressed that the conflict between Palestine and Israel did not start on October 7, 2023.
The violence and the destruction in Palestine and Israel did not begin on the 7th of October 2023. The Palestinians have experienced systematic oppression and violence for the last 76 years. On 6 October 2023, and every day since October the 7th, 2023. In the Gaza Strip, at least since 2004, Israel continues to exercise control over the airspace, territorial waters, land crossing, water, electricity, and civilian infrastructure, as well as over key government functions.
Article 2 of that convention defines genocide as a number of acts committed with the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious Meanwhile, pro-Palestine demonstrators disrupted a council meeting at Dallas City Hall on Wednesday, demanding an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and placing blame on the U.S. for its stance on the Israel-Hamas conflict. Details of this report from Sara Santos.
The protesters, as seen in the footage, interrupted the meeting with speeches supporting Palestine, chanting slogans and displaying banners. During the meeting, protesters voiced their concerns, with some expressing frustration towards U.S. policies. Outside Dallas City Hall, additional demonstrators used loudspeakers and carried Palestinian flags, along with banners reading "Stop Murdering Babies," "Ceasefire Now," "End the Siege of Gaza," and "Free Palestine." According to local media reports, the interruption at Dallas City Hall follows a previous protest at Dallas Love Field Airport, where 13 demonstrators were arrested during President Joe Biden's visit to attend the wake of Representative Eddie Bernice Johnson. The arrests occurred as protesters conveyed their pro-Palestine stance during Biden's presence in the city. To recall, Hamas launched an unprecedented attack on southern Israel on October 7, 2023, killing around 1,200 people, mostly civilians, and kidnapping over 200, according to Israeli officials. Reporting, this has been Sara Santos, SMNI News.
The Israeli army and the Lebanon-based Hezbollah traded fire once again across the border amid fears it could spread into a wider regional conflict. Jayne Codnita has a news.
Tensions escalated after Hezbollah launched a drone attack on an Israeli command base on Tuesday, causing Israel to retaliate with airstrikes that killed 3 Hezbollah members. The Lebanese militant group said the drone attacks were in retaliation for the killing of Hezbollah field commander Wissam al-Tawil on Monday and the deputy leader of Hamas, Saleh al-Aruri, on January 2nd in Beirut. Meanwhile, Israel claimed to have killed Hezbollah's Air Force commander Ali Hussein Barji, one of the militant group's high-ranking fighters, during an airstrike in Lebanon's southern region on Wednesday. The airstrike was launched moments before the funeral of Hezbollah field commander Wissam al-Tawil, which was attended by thousands of supporters. The exchange of strikes between Hezbollah and Israel intensified since Hamas launched the deadly attack in Israel on October 7, 2023. The escalating conflict between Israel and Hezbollah took place as U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken made a diplomatic visit to the Middle East this week. Reporting, this has been Jayne Codnita, SMNI News, Kuwait.
Germany's top diplomat visited the Philippines and expressed Berlin's commitment to enhance investments and cooperation in renewable energy sector in the Philippines. The visit comes in response to an invitation from Foreign Affairs Secretary Manalo, marking the first visit of a German federal foreign minister to the Philippines in over a decade. Val Divina Gracia reports.
Following an invitation from Secretary for Foreign Affairs Enrique A. Manalo, German Federal Foreign Minister Annalena Baerbock officially visited the Philippines starting Thursday. This visit is part of her official tour of the Middle East and Southeast Asia and marks the first visit by a German federal foreign minister to the Philippines in over a decade. During a joint press conference held in Manila on Thursday, Baerbock underscored Germany's interest in strengthening cooperation in the renewable energy sector in the Philippines. She emphasized that her country is home to leading companies in renewable energy and underscored the importance of clarifying regulations for investments.
We as the German government, we support heavily the investments in renewable energy around the world, and therefore we also had a deepened exchange about the modernization of regulation here in the Philippines. This is very good news for Germany's investment, especially in the renewable energy sector.
Germany is also a primary source of raw materials for the renewable energy industry. Baerbock's statement follows her meeting with Secretary Manalo on Thursday, held at the hotel in Makati. This visit is part of the celebration of the 70th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the Philippines and Germany this year. Key topics discussed by the officials included politics and the economy, with a focus on Germany's initiatives for peace and developmental cooperation in the Philippines. Both countries expressed their joint dedication to fundamental global order. The two officials also agreed to strengthen bilateral trade, promote investments, and enhance maritime cooperation. Their discussions also involve cooperation in manufacturing, particularly focusing on placing skilled Filipino workers and other professionals to live and work in Germany.
We have an important partnership with Germany in the economic area, trade and investment, also in defense, but also, as mentioned, above all, in support for the rule of law.
Aside from the mentioned aspects, Baerbock also stressed how important it is to strengthen Germany's bilateral relations with other countries for crisis prevention.
Unfortunately, the last year ended differently. In addition to the Russian war on Ukraine, we have now the war in the Middle East. So therefore, for us,
Minister Baerbock is expected to remain in the Philippines from January 11 to 12. God and my beloved country, the Philippines. This is Valdivina Gracia, SMNI News.
Indonesian President Joko Widodo has left the Philippines following his successful 3-day official visit. Meanwhile, the Malacanang confirmed that President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. received a commitment from Widodo to revisit the case of Mary Jane Veloso. President Catarong reports.
Indonesian President Joko Widodo assured President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. that his government would re-examine Mary Jane Veloso's case. Presidential Communications Office Secretary Chaloy Garafil confirmed this on Thursday when asked if PBBM received a commitment from the Indonesian president regarding the matter. Garafil mentioned that the Indonesian government is awaiting the decision of the Philippine court on the case filed by Veloso against her recruiter. Meanwhile, the Department of Foreign Affairs previously said that Veloso's case would be discussed in meetings between Philippine and Indonesian officials. Mary Jane Veloso is an overseas Filipino worker on death row since 2010. On the said year, Veloso was arrested in Indonesia for drug trafficking, found guilty, and sentenced to death. President Marcos hopes that Veloso's case will progress and that she will be granted clemency. The PCO previously stated that President Bongbong Marcos would bring up Veloso's case again during their bilateral meeting with President Jokowi. Meanwhile, Widodo's presidential plane left Villamor Air Base, Pasay City on January 11th after his successful 3-day official visit. During his visit, Widodo conducted a bilateral meeting with Marcos to strengthen bilateral ties between the Philippines and Indonesia. The two leaders discussed enhancing cooperation in various areas, including political, security, and economic partnerships.
I am pleased to inform you of the results of a successful visit of the President of Indonesia, President Joko Widodo, here to Manila. We had a cordial and productive discussion on Philippine-Indonesia bilateral cooperation, taking the opportunity to reaffirm our two countries' strong bilateral relations.
In a move to strengthen energy security cooperation, the leaders witnessed the signing of a Memorandum of Understanding on cooperation in the field of energy. They also addressed issues in the South China Sea and discussed strengthening border controls. The Philippines and Indonesia also reiterated their commitment to the universality of the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, or UNCLOS, as founding members of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or ASEAN. As part of Widodo's official visit, he visited the Copico Philippines Corporation instant coffee producer factory in Calamba, Laguna. Copico is an Indonesian food and beverage company owned by Mayora.
In the field of economy, in order to enhance trade, we agreed to continue to open market access, and Indonesia seeks the Philippines' support related to special safeguard measures on Indonesian coffee products.
Additionally, Widodo visited the seaweed processing industry at W Hydrocolloids Incorporated in Carmona Plant, Cavite. The Indonesian president expressed hope that Indonesia's seaweed processing industry would strengthen and could be exported to countries like the Philippines. During President Widodo's departure ceremony at Villamor Air Base, present were Office of the Presidential Advisor on Peace, Reconciliation and Unity or OPAPRO Secretary Carlito Galvez Jr., Philippine Ambassador to Indonesia Gina Hamuralin, and Pasay City Mayor Imelda Calixto Rubiano. For God and for my beloved Philippines, this has been Carceling Catarong, SMNI News.
The government of Japan designated the powerful Noto earthquake that flattened parts of central Japan as a disaster of extreme severity, Ria Saito reports.
Designating the Noto Peninsula earthquake as an extremely severe disaster will boost financial support for affected communities.
The financial support will be used by local authorities to implement projects such as the speedy reconstruction of roads and farmlands damaged by the magnitude 7.6 earthquake on the 1st of January. The government considers it an urgent priority to improve the living conditions of victims and to address their health needs. The measure will not only increase financial support but also lessen the financial burden on affected municipalities. In a recent meeting, the government also designated the Debde Trembler as a specified disaster. The move will extend the validity period of driver's licenses and restaurant business licenses for disaster victims. The disaster caused a serious damage to the fishing industry by destroying more than 50 fishing ports and capsizing dozens of fishing boats in the Ishikawa prefecture alone. The death toll from the New Year's Day earthquake surpassed 200 as of Wednesday, January 10th.
The government announced plans to double the reserve fund for 2024, which will be used to help the earthquake victims. Ijo News at Seshmashita, SMNI News, Japan.
The support for earthquake victims in Japan will be strengthened by doubling the reserve funds for the country's fiscal year 2024. The Japanese government plans to double the reserve fund for the draft budget in the upcoming fiscal year to enhance support for those affected by the earthquake in the Noto Peninsula. The initial draft budget allocates over 500 billion yen or more than $3 billion in reserves. Japanese officials are currently adjusting the budget to increase the reserve fund to over $600 billion to continue aiding earthquake victims after the new fiscal year starting in April. Their government also intends to allocate $3 billion from the current fiscal year reserves to extend assistance until March of this year, noting that it rarely amends its approved draft budget. This change is expected to be approved next Tuesday. The government of Papua New Guinea declared a state of emergency after mass looting and riots killed at least 15 people in the country's two biggest cities. Trisha Molina reports.
Violence rocked Papua New Guinea as hundreds of soldiers and government officials abandoned their jobs in protest over a pay dispute. The government blamed the computer glitch in the payroll system as the reason behind the salary cut. The unrest started in the capital of Port Moresby, with similar riots witnessed in Leh, its second biggest city. At least 15 people died in both cities on Wednesday, while dozens were injured. More than 1,000 troops have been deployed as the government works to restore order. The Pacific Island nation is home to a population of around 10 million and is rich in resources. But the high unemployment and increased living costs led to rising tensions. Reporting for Newsline World, Trisha Molina, SMNI News.
More news when Newsline World returns.
Kabayan, oo ikaw. Alam mo ba na you can win lots of prizes when you bring home a guest in the Philippines? The Department of Tourism brings you the Visita Be My Guest program. Joining is easy. 1. Sign up as a sponsor. You can do this via the official travel to the Philippines and upload your proof of travel to complete the registration process and earn e-raffle tickets and the BBNG travel passport and privilege card that you can use to get discounts as you travel around our award-winning destinations in the Philippines. Join now and get a chance to win in any of the 3 raffle dates in 2023. So what are you waiting for? Come home and bring a guest to the Philippines. Sign up, invite friends and family, and travel to the world's leading beach and dive destination and the world's leading country destination for tourism, the Philippines. Visita Be My Guest in the Philippines.
Problema nyo, itawag kay Panelo. Ikaw ba'y may suliranin na may kinalaman sa mga ahensya ng ating pamahalaan? Inihahandog ng SMNI ang programang makakapiling ninyo sa araw-araw na maaring ninyong maging daingan. Tampok ang dating Chief Legal Counsel ng nakaraang Pangulo, ang veteranong abogado na si Attorney Salvador Sal Panelo.
Bishops.
Tulong at payo tagapamagitan sa ating mga lingkod bayan. Problema nyo, itawag kay Panelo. Lunes hanggang Biyernes, alas 9 hanggang alas 10 ng umaga. Dito lamang sa SMNI. Ang totoong boses ng bayan.
Isang paglilingkod bayan na naman ang hatid ng SMNI para sa inyo mga kababayan. Dagdagan natin ang ating kaalaman patungkol sa kalusugan at iba't ibang mga sakit sa pamamagitan ng pagtuturo gamit ang ating sariling wika ng mga natatangi at espesyalistang mga doktor sa ating bansa. Itawag ang inyong mga naishinga ng payo patungkol sa inyong karamdaman.
Magandang umaga Luzon, Visayas at Mindanao.
Dito lang sa programa ng mga doktor ng bayan.
Magandang umaga Pilipinas.
Good. Samahan sina Kyle Selva, Val Divina Gracia at ang mga doktor ng bayan sa pangunguna ng dalubhasang doktor na si DOH Secretary Ted Herbosa.
Serbisyong pangkalusugan para sa Pilipinas nating mahal.
Tuwing Sabado alas 9:30 hanggang alas 10:30 ng umaga. Dito lamang sa SMNI. Mga doktor ng bayan, serbisyo publiko ng SMNI. Para sa Pilipinas nating mahal.
the president of Indonesia departed for Vietnam after completing his diplomatic visit to the Philippines. Anissa de Guzman for the details.
President Joko Widodo, known by his nickname Joko Wee, flew to Vietnam after meeting senior officials in the Philippines. Widodo arrived in the Philippines on Tuesday, January 9 and departed on Thursday, January 11. The Indonesian leader engaged in several meetings with high-ranking Filipino officials, including with President of the Philippines, Ferdinand Marcos Jr., while staying in the country. Joko Wee expressed his appreciation for the trust placed by the Philippine Department of National Defense in products from Indonesia, including defense equipment products such as planes and ships. In April 2023, Philippines signed an agreement to buy 6 additional NC-212I transport aircraft from Indonesia, with the orders expected to arrive in 2025. Both leaders also discussed the fate of Mary Jane Veloso, a Filipina on death row over drug charges since 2010, wherein Widodo assured his Philippine counterpart that the Indonesian government will re-examine her case. Indonesia and the Philippines enjoy friendly ties for the past 75 years. Reporting for Newsline World, Anissa de Guzman, SMNI News.
In the United States, New York authorities discovered a secret tunnel underneath a historic Brooklyn synagogue. But this discovery led to a brawl between the police and worshippers. Carlo de la Peña reports.
A synagogue in Brooklyn, New York, that serves as the center of a Hasidic Jewish movement was trashed this week during a community dispute that started with the discovery of a secret underground tunnel. The brawl between the police and worshippers erupted in the headquarters of the influential Chabad Lubavitch movement in Crown Heights. This site receives thousands of visitors yearly and is known as the largest Hasidic Jewish organization in the world. But this historic synagogue remained closed recently after the NYPD barricaded it. The chaos between the cops and worshippers broke out at the synagogue after the NYPD were called to the Chabad Lubavitch World Headquarters to deal with a crowd of young Jewish men who had allegedly vandalized cement trucks brought in by municipal workers to seal off a tunnel under the building. The police also arrested 9 members of the said movement after crowds of Orthodox Jews rioted when construction crews tried to fill in the secret underground tunnels that had been dug under the synagogue. Building safety agents also inspected whether the tunnel may have caused structural damage to the property. What are you seeing now is the inside of the mysterious underground tunnel, showing the interior, hallways, dirt-filled rooms, and more. The tunnels were discovered in December last year at a time when New York residents complained of suspicious noises coming underneath their homes. Construction workers laying pipes near the synagogue then came across a tunnel and alerted authorities. It is still unclear as to why the underground tunnels were dug or for what reason. Meanwhile, Forward, Jewish news site, claimed that they were dug in the last year or two in order to illegally expand the building. According to Hasidic news site CoLive, a division over religious doctrine and building ownership had erupted between the Chabad movement and a group of young Jews. The latter group was allegedly responsible for digging the tunnels. Meanwhile, Chabad Lubavitch chairman Rabbi Yehuda Krinsky condemned the act as vandalism and called those responsible as young agitators. He also vowed that such actions will be investigated. Reporting, this has been Carlo de la Peña, SMNI News.
Russian President Vladimir Putin touted that the European Union, especially Western Europe, needs Russia more than Moscow needs them, and that the Russian economy continues to grow despite sanctions. Shekinah Dikinya tells us more.
Russia is a self-sufficient country whose economy is growing despite sanctions. This is what President Vladimir Putin said during a meeting with residents of the Russian region of Chukotka. Chukotka is located in the easternmost territory of Russia and it borders the U.S. state of Alaska. According to Putin, member states of the European Union are living through tough times.
Даже ведущие экономики Европы переживают не лучшие времена. У нас рост, а у них падение. Ну, сейчас не будем это детали. Мы не радуемся этому, не зубоскалим, но факт. Факт остается фактом. А он такой, что оказалось, что их зависимость от нас больше, чем наша от них.
Russia became the most sanctioned country in the world since launching its so-called special military operation in Ukraine in February 2022. According to Statista, Russia currently has 16,077 sanctions imposed on its individuals and entities. The most recent sanctions by the EU was imposed by Russian mining giant Alrosa and its CEO, Pavel Marinichev. Reporting, this has been Jayne Codnita, SMNI News.
Norway inches closer to becoming the first country in the world to open its territorial waters for deep-sea mining. The decision sparked a massive outcry from experts who argued that the controversial practice would cause irreversible damage to marine life. Jayne Codnita follows the story.
Norway could become the first country in the world to support deep-sea mining after its parliament voted to allow the controversial practice to commence in the Norwegian Sea. The bill passed on Tuesday proposed opening 280,000 square kilometers of its national waters to mining companies. The area that will be open is larger than the Netherlands, South Korea, and Greece combined. The parliament vote will accelerate the hunt for precious metals such as magnesium, lithium, scandium, and cobalt, which are in high demand for clean technologies and can sustain mankind for many years. These metals also help feed the world's growing appetite for technology like smartphones and are critical in sustaining an environment-friendly future such as electric vehicles, batteries, and solar panels. The Norwegian government assured it will be done in a sustainable way and promised that it will not start issuing licenses until more environmental studies are carried out. But environmentalists and scientists publicly opposed the move and argued it would cause a catastrophic and irreversible impact on marine ecosystems and eliminate biodiversity, while some called the vote a sad day for Norway. More than 800 scientists have signed a petition demanding to stop the proposed deep-sea mining. Norwegian officials have not yet announced a timeline for starting exploration, but an agreement on mining in international waters is expected to be reached this year. Reporting from Sweden, this has been Jayne Codnita, SMNI News.
Australia cancelled its plan of holding a referendum to remove King Charles III as its head of state and become a republic. Sheena Salem has the news.
The vote to replace King Charles as Australia's head of state was put on hold, as the country anticipates a royal visit from the British monarch and his wife later this year. Assistant Minister of the Republic Matt Thistlethwaite said the government's priority right now is the cost of living and said there's no timetable yet for the proposed referendum. To recall, Australia formally proclaimed the British monarch as the country's head of state in September 2022. The proclamation was made a few days after the death of his mother, the late Queen Elizabeth II, who served as Australia's head of state for 70 years and visited the country 16 times during her reign. King Charles and Queen Camilla are expected to visit Australia before the end of the year. It will be the King's first trip to Australia since his ascension to the throne. The arrival of the first fleet of British ships at Sydney's Botany Bay in January 1788 marked the beginning of Britain's colonization of Australia. Australia is one of the 56 member states under the so-called Commonwealth of Nations, composed mostly of the former territories of the British Empire. The decision was made at a crucial time when Albanese's popularity dropped amid his attempts at constitutional reforms. The government spokesperson said that putting the question of monarchy at this point will make it harder to gain public support. Reporting from Melbourne, this is Sheena Salem, SMNI News, Australia.
Newsline World will be back after the break.
Kung akong tatanungin, kahit saang aspeto, gusto ko garantisado. Metikuloso akong tao, kaya gusto ko lahat maayos at sigurado. Lahat quality, yung hindi ako makukompromiso pero sulit ang presyo.
ganyan ang clean fuel. Kaya dito, panatag ang loob ko.
Magandang umaga po, sir. Full tank po.
Full tank. Kung gusto mo ng dekalidad na gasolina pero sulit ang halaga, mag-clean fuel ka.
Si Mang Juan, si Manong Jess, si Manong Jess, si Mang Juan. Magkatuwang para sa bayan. Dito sa Bayan ni Juan. Bayan ni Juan. Si Senador Juan Ponce Enrile at Jess Aranza. No holds barred na usapan. Dito sa Bayan ni Juan. Bayan ni Juan.
Sa ating mga kababayan na nasa ibayong dagat, at mayroong mga mahal na nasa ibang bansa, maging sa mga nais mga ibang bayan. Abangan ang programang Kabayan Abroad sa bago nitong time slot tuwing Biyernes, alas 9 hanggang alas 10 ng gabi, si Kabayan Parties Representative Ron Salo, Lady B, at Sara Santos ng SMNI. Alamin ang mga programa ng pamahalaan, kabayan at SMNI para sa ating mga OFWs. Matuto patungkol sa iba't ibang kultura, tunghayan ang pagtatagumpay ng ating mga bagong bayani sa Kabayan Abroad, dito lamang sa SMNI.
Back to our news, a highly transmissible but mild COVID-19 subvariant becomes the most dominant strain in Thailand. Chatmongkod Pisamay Gosorn reports.
JN1, a highly contagious and fast-spreading strain that descended from the Omicron variant, is now spreading fast a few months after it was detected in Thailand.
The first case of the sophisticated strain was detected in Bangkok on October 28. Within 3 months, JN1 became the most dominant strain in the country. The highly transmissible strain is said to be the best at catching and avoiding antibodies compared to its predecessors, according to experts. It was expected to become the most dominant strain in Thailand since last month. JN1 is the second most common strain in the U.S. based on data from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. The new variant has spread across 41 countries and has been classified as a variant of interest by the World Health Organization.
The rise of the highly transmissible strain in Thailand comes at a time when local doctors warn pregnant women to undergo tests amid surging cases of the Zika virus. The mosquito-borne virus infected more than 750 people and caused birth deformities among 13 babies in 2013. รายงานจากราชบุรี นายชัดมงคลพิสมัยโกศล SMNI ประเทศไทย สวัสดีครับ
Lawyers representing SMNI addressed the National Telecommunications Commission or NTC and urged them to specifically point out the network's alleged violations as its basis for its 30-day suspension on radio and free TV. SMNI also submitted a motion for reconsideration regarding the suspension imposed by the Movie and Television Review and Classification Board on 2 of its programs. Jason Rubrico reports.
SMNI representatives visited the offices of the National Telecommunications Commission or NTC and Movie and Television Review and Classification Board or MTRCB on Thursday morning to file motions against separate suspensions imposed by the two agencies. SMNI's legal team wants NTC to specify the alleged violations of the network to justify the 30-day suspension on radio and free TV. The network particularly submitted a motion for bill of particulars to the NTC seeking clarification on the grounds for suspension.
We're asking the NTC to explain ano yung mga violation para masagot namin.
When asked if the NTC hinted at the alleged violations to SMNI, Attorney Rolex Suplico jokingly suggested consulting a fortune teller for answers.
So, ano bang kasalanan namin? Itanong ba namin kay Madam Auring ito o kay bago na ngayon, Hans Kua? Kasi hindi namin alam eh.
The lawyers clarified that the new petition filed is distinct from the earlier petition for inhibition against 3 NTC officials. SMNI filed a motion for reconsideration regarding the suspension of its 2 programs, Laban Kasama ang Bayan and former President Rodrigo Duterte's Gikan sa Masa para sa Masa.
Ang argument natin, number 1, freedom of press, freedom of expression, and on public issues, we have the right to be informed of the nature and cause of the accusation. Kung hindi sila makapresenta ng clear and present danger rule as a basis for the ruling, the presumption will prevail. And that presumption is the ruling of the MTRCB are presumed unconstitutional. Ang epekto ng motion for reconsideration, hindi yan final and executory yung suspension ng MTRCB.
To recall, the MTRCB suspended the 2 programs starting December 18 of 2023. SMNI previously filed a motion for reconsideration, but on January 4, MTRCB extended the suspension for 14 more days. If the MTRCB rejects SMNI's motion, the lawyers plan to appeal to the Office of the President. The MTRCB assured a thorough review of SMNI's motion in accordance with its mandate. On the part of the NTC, they said they will also study the motions filed by the SMNI, including the inhibition of the 3 NTC officials in the case. Meanwhile, former President Duterte earlier expressed his desire to speak with President Bongbong Marcos regarding SMNI's current situation. He mentioned that his program Gikan sa Masa para sa Masa also suffered due to the network suspension.
Kasi nadali yung aking Gikan sa Masa. Isali ko na lang yung akin because yun ang importante sa akin yung ayaw kong I do not want to confront the president but rather I'd like to talk to him indirectly kung bakit ganon. Ako, as far as I am concerned, I have not crucified him, not even criticized him severely. Maybe commented on the directions that the government is proceeding.
To this, Presidential Communication Office Secretary Cheloy Garafil said the Malacanang is open to a dialogue with President Duterte. The legal team of SMNI also has something to say to those behind the suspension of the programs and the network's operation.
Simple lang sinasabi namin dito, huwag kayo balat sibuyas. Huwag kayo manging balat sibuyas. Yun lang sinasabi natin dito.
For God and my beloved Philippines, I am Jason Rubrico, SMNI News.
A man from Guinea with hopes to travel to Egypt and land a place in an elite university cycled across Africa and was later given a full scholarship. Sam Gutierrez has the story.
Mamadou Safayu Barry dreamed to fly to Cairo, but unfortunately, he couldn't afford a plane ticket. So he decided to travel by land, not on 4 wheels, but 2. From Guinea to Mali, Burkina Faso, Togo, Benin, Niger, and to Chad. For Americans, that's like cycling from New York in the East Coast to Los Angeles in the West Coast. During his almost endless journey, he found himself locked up behind bars for 9 days. But this unfortunate experience did not stop him, nor was he discouraged. In a surprise interview with Hollywood star Will Smith, Mamadou shared that when he got to Chad, a good Samaritan who found out about his story offered financial support to fly him to Egypt from there. 4,000 kilometers, 7 countries, and 4 months later, he managed to reach his destination and was accepted to Al-Azhar University. The multi-awarded winner, actor, and rapper was deeply moved by Mamadou's story that he gifted the scholar a new bike and a laptop. He was also given travel vouchers to be able to go back and forth to see his wife and daughter in Guinea. When Mamadou finished studying his engineering course, he shared that he wishes to return to his home country, become a teacher in order to share what he has learned. Reporting, this has been Sam Gutierrez, SMNI News.
Metro Manila residents now have options for purchasing affordable vegetables. MJ Mondihar has the story.
Martin was late in harvesting cabbages to send down the mountain. The livelihood of vegetable farmers in Benguet relies heavily on vegetable prices in the market.
Oo, may challenge talaga eh. Ngayon medyo parang kumukulang pa sa kumukulang sa suporta ng mga pamilya.
Bukod sa mga repolyo, tinatanim din dito sa farm ang mga carrots, patatas, radish at pechay bagyo. Lahat ng kanilang produce o mga ani ay direkta nilang binabagsak o binibenta sa Metro Manila at ibang bahagi ng bansa. According to Billy Carino of Benguet Vizcaya Trading Post, all of these vegetables can be bought in Metro Manila at reasonable prices. So they established a trading post in Taguig City that started operating in December last year.
Punti ang farm noon, ang outlet, Divisoria, Balintawak ang natutugan natin. Kaya yun ang alam ng lahat ng taga Manila. Doon sila bumibili. Pero ngayon na dumami ang farmer, dumami ang garden, doon pa rin kaya nasasakal yung produkto na bumabagsak na oversupply. So ang kailangan, yun, gumawa tayo ng outlet na isang trading post.
Vegetables are transported from the province of Benguet to the trading post. Here, vegetables can be bought at a cheaper price, whether retail or wholesale.
Mas nakakatipid kaysa doon sa palengke namin.
The trading post operates 24/7. The vegetable prices here match those in Benguet. It's a literal farm-to-market transaction. Those managing the trading post ensure they control the vegetable prices.
Direkta kami, direktang farmer, walang middleman.
Food Terminal Incorporated ensured support for the trading post, especially since the new vegetable market is located on FTI's property.
It's just right and proper since FTI is committed to food security and food stability. Yun naman po talagang aming mandato para sa ating mga marginalized fisher folks and farmers po.
Benguet farmers are hopeful for the success of the trading post to avoid wastage of their produce and contribute to feeding Metro Manila residents.
Sana nga para mas lumawak ang trading natin. Para marami tayong susuplayan ng mga gulay.
Gusto namin na ipaalam sa Metro Manila na may murang presyo na ng gulay dito sa trading post sa Taguig. Ang tawag dito, Benguet Vizcaya Trading Post sa Taguig.
For those interested, simply visit the trading post at the FTI Cold Storage Facility compound in Taguig. For Ganimable of Philippines, MJ Mondihar, SMNI News.
And before we end, may you be inspired with a message of the appointed Son of God. The greatest love is when you are willing to live and die for a cause. And that's all for this edition. For more updates, you may visit SMNINewsChannel.com or follow us on our official social media accounts on Rumble, YouTube, Facebook, and Twitter. Thank you for watching, and we thank our beloved pastor, Pastor Apollo C. Kibuloy, for the opportunity to be a part of this program. For God and my beloved country, the Philippines, I'm Jayne Codnita, and this is Newsline World.